Somewhere tonight, a man is sitting at his kitchen table, holding a piece of paper he doesn't understand. He taught history, 40 years of it, standing at a chalkboard explaining to teenagers how the world really works, who held the power, who paid the price. He was good at it. The paper in his hands now is his pension statement, the money that's supposed to carry him through whatever years he has left. And the number at the bottom is smaller than it was last month. Not by much, just enough to make him take off his glasses, just enough to make him go quiet. He doesn't know why. And here's the strange part. If he called someone to ask, they probably couldn't tell him either. Because the reason that number moved has almost nothing to do with him, nothing to do with his town, nothing to do with anything he ever signed. It has to do with a decision made 1,000 miles away in a tower of glass and steel in New York by a company he has never called, never met, and honestly couldn't name. A company that makes nothing, sells nothing you could ever hold in your hand, and still, quietly, without ever raising its voice, it touches more money than almost every nation on earth. More than $10 trillion. Let me put that where you can feel it. There is more money moving through this one company than through the entire economy of any country in the world, except two, the United States and China. That's the whole list. It's bigger than Japan, bigger than Germany, and most people who walk right past its doors have no idea what happens inside. Which brings me to something that happened just a few months ago. Something that barely made the news, but quietly frightened the handful of people who really understand this world. This company, and a few others built just like it, did something they almost never do. They stopped letting people leave. Investors, and I don't mean everyday people. I mean some of the wealthiest, most connected investors alive, asked for their own money back. Money they had put in. Money they were promised they could take out whenever they wanted. And the answer was no. Not wait, not soon. No. Half of them walked away with empty hands. So how does a history teacher's pension in a small town end up tangled in the same machine that just told billionaires they couldn't have their money? To answer that, we're going to do something almost nobody does with a story like this. We won't start at the top, in the tower, the way it's always told. We'll start at the bottom, at his kitchen table, and we'll follow the money, $1 of it, all the way up. Because the real story was never about how big they got. It was about how invisible they learned to be. And by the end of this, you'll look at your own money a little differently. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let's follow it. That $1. It starts small. Every month out of that teacher's paycheck, back when he still got one. A little piece was set aside for the pension. He never saw it, never touched it. It just went somewhere. And somewhere is where this whole story lives. That dollar didn't sit in a vault. Pensions can't let money sleep. They've got promises to keep. Thousands of retirees all waiting on a check that has to clear. So the people running that pension have one job that never really ends. Find places to put the money where it earns a little more. For a long time that was easy. You bought the safe, boring things, government bonds. They paid enough, everybody slept fine. Then the world changed. The safe thing stopped paying enough. And when the safe road stops paying, money starts wandering down quieter streets, looking for more. That's where it found something new, something with a plain, forgettable name: private credit. Here's what it actually is, and I'll keep it simple because they'd rather you found it complicated. Picture a company that needs a big loan, not a small one, hundreds of millions. In the old world, it walked into a bank. But somewhere along the way, the bank stopped answering. So now it goes somewhere else. It goes to a firm like the one in the tower. But, and this is the part almost nobody notices, the money that firm lends out isn't theirs. It's the teachers, it's the pensions. It's that dollar he set aside and forgot. The firm in the middle barely risks a cent of its own. It just stands between the two ends. The retiree on one side, the company that needs the loan on the other, and takes a cut, a very good cut, every year, for as long as the loan lives. Now, why did the bank stop answering in the first place? Go back to the year 2008, the crash. When it was over, the world was furious, and it wanted someone to make sure it never happened again. So they wrote new rules, hard ones. They told the banks, be careful, hold more, risk less. And the banks obeyed. They pulled back. But here's the thing about risk. Our history teacher could have told you this one. Push it out of one room, and it doesn't disappear. It just walks into the next room. The one with fewer lights, fewer rules, and nobody watching the door. That next room is what they built. A whole world of lending that isn't a bank, doesn't answer to the people a bank answers to, doesn't have the same net stretched underneath it if it falls. And some people, more honest than the rest, gave it a name that tells you everything. They call it shadow banking. For years it worked beautifully. The returns were higher. The checks kept coming. Everybody was happy. The retiree, the pension, the company, the firm taking its cut. A machine so smooth, you'd never think to look inside it. But every machine like this hides one weakness, one quiet flaw, sitting right in the middle. Those loans, the ones your dollar became, they don't come back fast. They're locked in for years. You can't just call them home on a Tuesday because someone got scared. There's a word for that. Hold on to it, because in a few minutes, this one word is going to explain everything. Illiquid. Now we're high enough up the chain to see the top. So let's talk about the man in the tower. His name is Larry Fink. And to understand what he built, you have to understand what broke him first. In the early 80s, Fink wasn't a giant. He was a young star at a big Wall Street firm. Brilliant, fast. The kind of man everyone in the room watches when he talks. He made that firm a fortune. He was, by every measure, on his way to the top. And then one quarter, a single bet went the wrong way. It cost the firm around $100 million. There was no scandal, no headline. What happened to Fink was quieter, and in some ways worse. The invitations slowed. The good meetings happened without him. The room that once turned to hear him talk simply stopped. Until one day he understood. He was no longer wanted in the place he'd given his whole life to. If that's ever happened to you, if you've ever felt a door close on you softly, without anyone having the decency to slam it, then you already understand Larry Fink better than most people who write about him. But he didn't leave with bitterness. He left with an idea. He decided the thing that destroyed him wasn't the loss itself. It was the fact that nobody saw it coming. The hidden risk, the danger with no warning. And he became obsessed, genuinely, permanently obsessed, with building something that would never be blindsided again. So in 1988, he started over. And the promise at the center of his new company was almost boring. We will understand risk better than anyone alive. He built a kind of digital mind to watch it, to measure it, to catch the thing before it caught you. Slowly that mind grew, until it was quietly watching the risk on trillions of dollars all over the world. And then came 2008 again, but this time from the other side of the table. When the crash hit and the giants were burning, the government of the United States needed someone to walk into the wreckage and tell them what was really inside it. What could be saved? What was poison? And the company they turned to was his. Sit with that for a second. The most powerful government on earth, facing the worst financial disaster in generations, picked up the phone and called a private company for the answers. That was the moment Fink's firm stopped being a company. It became something closer to plumbing, infrastructure, part of the machine everyone else was standing on, which is what makes the next part so strange. Because a couple of years ago, this company, the one built on seeing every risk, went shopping, quietly, deliberately. First around $12.5 billion for one of the largest owners of infrastructure on the planet. The roads, the ports, the pipelines under your feet. Then around $3 billion for something far less obvious and maybe far more important. The company that holds the data on these private markets. Think about what that means. If you own the numbers everyone else uses to measure a market, you're not just a player in it anymore. You keep the score. And then the move that mattered most. Around $12 billion for one of the most respected private credit firms on Wall Street. And in a single stroke, it stood up a private lending operation with more than $200 billion inside it. Add it all up, more than $28 billion in barely a year. Every dollar of it aimed at one thing, owning the shadow. And the goal out loud is bigger still. To pull hundreds of billions more into these private markets before the decade is done. So the company born promising to see every hidden risk in the world walked straight into the one corner of finance designed to keep things hidden and started buying it. Which leaves one honest question hanging in the air. The one all of this has been quietly building toward. Why? Why would the most careful giant in all of finance run toward the darkest room in the house? There are two answers, and they could not be more different. Two answers. Let's take them one at a time. The first is the one the company itself would give you, and it's a good one. Good enough that you can't just wave it away. It goes like this. Those private markets have always been dark, messy, closed off to anyone who wasn't already rich. And what a giant like this brings is light, the technology to measure it, the data to map it, a way to finally crack that world open for ordinary people. In this version, the company isn't the danger. It's the one who walked in and turned on the lamp. And there's real truth in that. Hold on to it. You'll need it in a minute. But there's a second answer, and the people who lie awake at night thinking about this, they lean toward the second one. In this version, something is quietly wrong with the whole picture. The most powerful money manager alive, the one that made its name promising to see every risk, dives headfirst into the least transparent market there is, and then buys a company that keeps its numbers. So now one giant is playing the game, refereeing the game, and printing the scoreboard everyone reads, all at once. And no one voted for that. No one chose it. It simply happened, while everyone was looking somewhere else. Genius or too much power in a single pair of hands? The honest answer is that it's probably both, at the very same time. And that's the part you can't look away from. Because not long ago, the picture cracked. It didn't crack at the top, not in the tower. It cracked in two places almost nobody was watching. One was a company that made auto parts. Ordinary, unglamorous stuff. It had borrowed more than $10 billion, and then without much warning, it simply came apart. Around the same time, another one fell. A lender to people buying cars they could barely afford. And in the ruins of that one, there were whispers of something uglier. Fraud. Two small fires in two forgotten corners. But the people who understand this world felt the temperature shift in the entire house. And that's when the head of the biggest bank in America said something that traveled across Wall Street like a cold draft under a door. He said, "When you see one cockroach, there are probably more. One cockroach, probably more. And listen, if you've come this far with me, if you're still in this room while everyone else scrolled past, let me just say it plainly. Subscribe. Follow this channel and stay with me day after day. Not because I'm asking for a favor, because you've already shown me who you are. You're not the type who wants an opinion handed to you to swallow whole. You want to see how the thing actually works, under the floorboards, behind the curtain, in the rooms nobody points to. That's what we do here. That's the whole reason this exists. So if that's you, come in, sit down. There's more. Now, back to that cold draft. Because the reason one cockroach means more, the reason two small fires frighten the smartest people in the building, all comes down to a single word. The one I told you to hold. Illiquid. Remember? Those loans don't come home fast. They're locked away for years. But the funds that hold them made a promise they can't always keep. That you can pull your money out whenever you like. And it works. As long as only a few people ask at a time. But when fear spreads, everyone reaches for the exit at once. And the money isn't there to give back. It's out in the world, buried in loans that won't return for years. The math just doesn't close. Now I owe you some honesty, because this is exactly where a weaker story would lie to you. Plenty of serious people looked at those two fires and said, "Don't panic. That was fraud, isolated. A couple of bad apples, not a rotten tree." The bank chiefs themselves swore their own books were clean, careful, spread thin across 1,000 different places. And they may be right. I want you to hold that possibility honestly, because it matters. But the market had already felt it. The nervousness was already in the air. And here is a thought that started to haunt the few who were paying attention, the one I need you to carry into what comes next. What if the greatest danger of all doesn't come from some villain hiding in the dark? What if it comes from the one who walked in, turned on the light, and quietly became too big to ever leave? Hold that, because that's when it began to close. Early this year, it began to close. One of the giant's own private credit funds got a wave of people asking for their money back, all at once. Together they wanted around $1.2 billion returned to them. They got back a little more than half, around $620 million. And then a limit came down, a quiet clause written into the fine print years before anyone needed it, that lets the fund simply stop honoring the requests, lock the door. Half of them walked away with empty hands. And it wasn't only this one. Other great names on Wall Street did the same thing in the same season. One of them stopped paying out entirely, and instead of money, handed its investors a promise, a slip of paper that said, "Later, we'll pay you later." This was the thing that barely made the news, the thing I told you about at the very beginning. Now you know what it was. But here's what I need you to understand, and it's the coldest part of the whole story. For the giant in the tower, this is not the end. It won't fall. It's too large, too spread out, too woven into the machine itself to be brought down by this. When the smoke clears, it will still be standing. It may even be stronger. Because when things go cheap, the one with the deepest pockets is the one who gets to buy the wreckage. So who feels it? Who actually pays? Go back down the chain, all the way down, past the tower, past Wall Street, back to the small town, back to the kitchen table, back to him, the history teacher. 40 years, a pension statement, and a number at the bottom that got a little smaller. He never called that company, never met it, couldn't name it. He never signed a single thing. And yet, when the door closed 1,000 miles away, in a room he will never see, he's the one left holding the silence. He's the one who pays for a decision he was never part of. He turned on no light. He built no shadow. He just set a little aside every month for 40 years and trusted that someone, somewhere, was watching the risk. Someone was. That was always a promise, to see the risk, to catch the thing before it caught you. The light walked into the dark room, and the dark room is still dark. Only now, it belongs to the one who was holding the lamp. He spent 40 years at a chalkboard, teaching kids the same lesson over and over. Who holds the power? Who pays the price? He just never thought the last lesson would be his own. I'm not going to tell you what to feel about that. You're a grown person. You felt it before I finished the sentence. I'll only ask you for 3 small things before you go. Follow this channel, because there are other rooms like this one, and we're going to keep walking into them, one at a time, together. Send this to 5 people. 5. The ones who still believe none of this reaches them. Because that was the whole trick. The entire trick. Making sure they never looked. And down in the comments, tell me something true. Not a performance. The truth. After everything you just heard, would you hand your future to something you can't see? And tell me which room you want us to walk into next. The teacher is still at his table. The paper is still in his hands. And now, so is yours.